Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, my entitled stupid homeowner association neighbor calls the police on me after breaking into my property and seeing me in a bikini in my private pool. She claims being naked is illegal and demands that I get evicted from my home. The situation escalates and I honestly could not be more upset. Here is what happened. The title story goes like this. So I live in an HOA and while I hate to admit it, I don't find it extremely bad. Mine has never gotten to a point where they make a bunch of crazy rules or start picking on people to my knowledge. To be honest, if it wasn't for a single person, I might forget on occasion that I am in an HOA neighborhood. However, that person is my next door neighbor and one of the people that help run the HOA, I guess. She is not the president of the association or anybody that important, but she comes off with an attitude that says she thinks she is. I get in arguments with her all of the time that are mostly based on her telling me that something is against the HOA bylaws and me telling her that it actually isn't. Then it will usually follow with her claiming she's gonna make it a rule and then I will pay, to which I wave her off. She is not really threatening to me and just more annoying than anything else. I do make a note to make sure that my kids don't play near her house though, because she can get a feisty mouth and no care who hears her. So much for wanting to help maintain a nice family-friendly environment, right? Personally, I have a pool in my backyard and it can get hot where I live in the summer, so I tend to put it to good use. The whole family uses it, but I like to sometimes be selfish and take some mom alone time to have a relaxing soak with a glass of wine. Those are days my husband is with the kids or they are off at grandma's house. Now, my neighbor is against pools for some reason and I know has been trying and failing to get them banned from the neighborhood for years to no avail. One day seeing me though must have made her snap because she ended up in my backyard yelling at me. "Neighbor, get out of there right now. You cannot do that." Me, get the hell out of my yard. F you cannot just be out here in the neighborhood naked for anybody to see. I can call the police and have you arrested. Me, and I can make sure you are escorted off my property for trespassing. So get the F out now. I would like to note that I was not naked but wearing a bikini. I don't know about every single place in the world and I'm sure that some places are strict enough that not even that is allowed. Here though, if I'm on my own property, I can wear anything I want in the pool. A bikini is perfectly natural and I don't know what this lady was on to come and start a fight about. I even moved up a little to show her that I wasn't naked, thinking maybe if that would appease her, she would just walk away. But no, she was just as angry and started calling the police on me right then and there. I could hear her end of the conversation perfectly with her saying some woman was naked and running around the entire neighborhood scaring children and the elderly. She made it sound like I was on drugs or something and losing my mind naked. Meanwhile, I was just sitting on the edge of my pool in complete shock that she went this far. I did not know what to do exactly, so I hoped that when the police came and saw the crazy lady, that was me, sitting calmly with a bathing suit on, they would go away. They did arrive and were fairly confused at my neighbor, pointing and saying that they had to arrest me right away because I was breaking the law and HOA rules. Policeman, what exactly is the issue here? You don't want her in a bikini in her own pool? Neighbor, she is naked and the entire neighborhood can just walk in and see this. Policeman, she's not naked though. She is wearing a bikini and in her own backyard. That is not a crime. Neighbor, it's the same thing as if she was standing out here in her underpants. She looks like a total slut and I for one don't want to see it. Me, then maybe don't come into my backyard without permission. Policeman number 2, ma'am, please just let us handle this. You are not in any trouble. Neighbor, screw that. I want her evicted from her house for breaking the law right now. Take out your guns and handcuff her and take her away so this neighborhood can be safe. I cannot tell if that meant she wanted me shot for wearing a bikini, but honestly, I'm gonna interpret it as that. While she was still going, I was asking the second policeman if I had any right to ask her to be removed from my private property. She was obviously not invited and came in to harass me and called the police on me with some fake story. They told me that they could make her go back to her house, but were not too keen on arresting her unless she continued to do things like this. That was okay enough for me at this point, so they tried to get her off my property to continue their conversation somewhere else. Karen was not happy about that though and said she was refusing to leave my yard until they arrested and evicted me for my lewd behavior. With her volume, other people had been on the street looking, and she was causing a public disturbance. The police warned her that she had to leave or they could and would arrest her for trespassing and disturbing the peace. Not to mention that she could still get in trouble for calling 911 with a total lie in order to get police to come in the first place. Obviously, if she told the truth, then they would have told her on the phone that it was not an emergency and would not have come. She, of course, did not listen and even tried to argue that since she was part of the HOA, that meant she was not allowed to be arrested. That plan worked out as well as anybody could guess, and after one more warning, they finally arrested her. I could tell they didn't want to be bothered and hoped that she would listen and they could go without having to arrest anybody that day. The backlash of what happened was not very good in her favor either. Like I said in the beginning, the HOA here is pretty calm to be honest and did not like the fact that somebody was throwing a fit and getting attention all in the name of the HOA. So what ended up happening was that she was getting kicked out of her small position and ironically enough ended up getting some HOA fines of her own for what happened. The arrest did not really lead to anything and she was given a warning to stay off of people's properties and not to call the police unless it was an actual emergency. I know it would have been more satisfying if she went to jail for some of you, but for me, watching her lose the tiny amount of power she thought she had felt just as good. And yeah, ripe stars, here we have it. This is actually a rare example of a homeowners association that doesn't seem too bad. But as usual, you of course have the entitled HOA Karen that has to ruin it for everyone. Let's hope that the neighborhood is now more peaceful. If you enjoy the HOA stories, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support me. The next one is titled Never Steal My Food. So we got this amazing Italian place near us. Their meatballs are of pork, lamb and beef. Truly things that melt in your mouth. The hard part is that my girlfriend is a very attractive Hispanic woman. The owner of this restaurant, I have heard, are from Sicily, and when she goes in to order our meatball subs, they load up her order. Each sandwich has 5 of these wonderful mixed meats with Parmesan cheese. Flirtatious happy Italian man oogling to fulfill her order. Now, if I go in to order the same, white man, blonde hair, blue eyes, they are short with me, don't offer options and tell me the X amount. They wanted to charge me extra for Parmesan cheese. I literally get 4 meatballs per sandwich. When I get my food, each sandwich is short a wonderful spicy meatball. So now my petty revenge, a few days later I called asking for the manager. I told him that I was the editor of a popular food critic for the local paper. I went on to ask him several questions about their food, menu and pricing. At the end I told him that I had sent both female and male critics to judge their menu. When I explained that our female critic was being hit upon and offered more than our male critic, he went into full-out damage control. I said I would publish my report in the next week. Of course, that never happened because I was not a food critic. Since then, when I go in, I get my 5 meatballs on my sandwiches. And yeah, ripe stars, I'm curious, do you enjoy Italian food? What is your favorite cuisine in the world? Let me know. For me personally, it's probably either French, Sri Lankan or Burmese food. The next one is titled, He Got What He Deserved. My ex-husband and I had a great divorce. Even though he cheated on me after 12 years and 2 kids under 4, I really wanted to do things differently than my parents did during their divorce. I never said anything negative about him and tried very hard to defend him when the kids got upset with him. I extended invitations to the woman he left me for so she would not feel uncomfortable with me and we became friends. She was basically their stepmom, so why not include her on everything? On holidays we all had one big dinner, he and her and me and my boyfriend. This made everyone comfortable and the kids never had to choose one side or the other as we were all on the same page. To be honest, it was such a great relationship that when I had back surgery, I recovered at his house and she cooked for me. He and I were coaches for the kids' basketball and baseball teams, and I helped at their wedding 13 years later. This wasn't easy for me as he moved to another state to raise her children, leaving me to raise ours on my own. She quit her job when they got together and I had to return to work to support my kids. I needed to keep the resentment and bitterness away from my kids. All of this sets the tone for the divorce, but when he initially left, I spoke to a lawyer and got a separation agreement that was really great for me. He asked that I not take half of his retirement, but instead he would pay X in child support, an additional Y in alimony because he was making a lot of money and I was a stay-at-home mom with a country club membership. Yuck. I hated saying that, but it was only to set the scene. So normally alimony ends after 5 years, but because I did not get half of the 401k, the only condition on ending it was it would end on my remarriage or my death. And he agreed with all of it. The thing is, when he left me to move down to where she lived, he left his cushy job and took this promising but not delivering position that really screwed him over financially. But he never went back to the lawyer or get the child support or alimony reduced. Instead, he borrowed from his mother. When I discovered he was mooching off of her, I suggested to her that she stop paying for him when he finally got back on his feet. She never would do that and continued paying for his life and her to be a stay-at-home mom, even co-signing for a second home for him when he finally moved back to raise his kids. Hers had graduated and lived in his old house and ours were in HS. He did come to me and ask if I would accept regular child support and half of the alimony, and then later when he was really earning money, he would pick back up on the past due amount. Not wanting to make waves in an otherwise great divorce, I said yes and kept track each month of what was owed in a shared spreadsheet with him so he could see how far in debt he was getting each month. He ended up owing me $1 per month x 10 years, but he said when the kids aged out of child support, he would continue to pay the same amount to make up for the alimony, which totaled to around $120,000. When my daughter aged out, he continued to pay the same amount, putting a small dent in what he owed for 3 years. Then, as soon as my son aged out, I meant 2 weeks after he joined the Marines, he called me and told me there was no way he was gonna continue paying me for the next X amount of years, and I could take him to court if I wanted to, but there is no effing way he would pay me another cent. This completely blew my mind as we had such a fantastic relationship and it came out of nowhere. I was completely freaked out, but I took his advice, I contacted an attorney and I sent all his calls to voicemail, and per my attorney's advice, I took him to court. The best thing was, prior to the hearing, my attorney put a lien on both homes he had so he could not change ownership to his mom or wife prior to the court hearing. I still got the phone call recording when he realized this and the horrible names he called me for doing that. Since I had kept such immaculate records from that day, he changed payments and he was made aware of his debt rising each month. It was a slam dunk for my attorney. Instead of making small payments for a few years, he had 30 days to pay me $120K in full. Unfortunately, the kids now have to choose which parent they visit on holidays, but that was not my fault. I was willing to continue as is and not put any strain on the family relationship. And for those who are wondering, yes, he did cheat on her 2 times before they got married, but she had quit her job and when they got together because she found a sugar daddy and had nothing to fall back on / nowhere to go, so she stayed with him. And by the way guys, this guy sounds totally horrible. What an awful human being. Anyway, since we were friends, she shared this info with me, as I would understand what she was going through. Edit, I got my money on day 29. No other payments will be made. Edit number 2, I think the reason he went crazy on me was that his mother refused to pay any more when my son aged out, but I explained that he owed a crap ton in back pay. That is when he said, "If you think I'm making payments to you forever, you're nuts." She had been paying his child support for 10 years because he never went back to a great paying job even though he could have. Yes, I went to work after separation and got a great career. However, my income was still 1/4 of his when we were together because he moved every 3 years for his career. He wanted me to stay at home when the kids were born. Edit number 3, it's obvious that people don't understand that as a stay-at-home mom, I could not contribute to my retirement fund because I didn't have earned income, meaning no SS, 401k or IRA. So that's why he maxed out his contribution so we could live comfortably in retirement. After 10 years of marriage, I was legally entitled to half of his retirement. Since he asked me not to take half of his retirement, he offered alimony instead, and then he decided not to pay what he offered and left me with less retirement funds than I would have had in a me the case. Slim my or half of his retirement. This is why it was important for me to get what was due. Not to live a cushy life, but for my retirement. And yeah, ripe stars, to be honest, I'm not even sure why this post was slightly controversial on Reddit, because obviously the guy in question was a total POS. He cheated on both of them, and then in the end he decided not to pay anymore. I honestly feel bad for both of the women in this story. The next one is titled, Everyone Has to Follow the Rules. I bought my first house in 1999 and I wanted DirecTV. I put up a satellite dish which happened to be behind a privacy fence. I also knew the FCC ruling that HOAs could not prevent you from putting up a dish due to some malfeasance with home builders who would make shady deals with cable companies to force homeowners to go with a specific company. I think that's right. I figured I would not have any issues since it was behind a fence anyway. I got a knock at my door the next day and it was my neighbor from across the cul-de-sac, telling me she is on the board of the HOA. Your dish is in violation and must be removed. This was my first encounter with her. I politely explained the law as I knew it and told her to have a nice day. We did not speak again and she ended up moving out soon. Well, it turns out she did not move out and was just renting to some other lady I never spoke to. And the HOA lady moved back in a year later. There was an easement behind my house which was properly mowed when I moved in. I would hit golf balls down there with my wedge and my neighbor who was into archery used it as his range. By the second summer I lived there, it was overgrown and an eyesore. I could not even see the creek just behind my house anymore. One weekend I borrowed my dad's utility trailer and I spent 3 days clearing out our little section behind the houses, hauling all of the debris away, probably 2 trips a day. My arms were covered in cuts from briars and apparently I was also dealing with some egg poison ivy or some other stuff because by Monday I was having an allergic reaction so badly that I went to the doctor to get a steroid shot. Laid up in the house all day and I get a knock at the door. It is the neighbor woman again. Apparently there's a rule that you cannot store a trailer in the driveway for more than 3 days and this was day number 4. I needed to remove it by the end of the day or face a $500 fine. She handed me a paper listing the rule and I considered just paying the fine, but instead I angrily drove an hour each way to return my dad's trailer after spending half the day already waiting in a hospital lobby. I got home after dark. What struck me as odd was there was a list of things you could not store in your driveway, for example personal watercrafts, boats, trailers, etc. The odd part was that motorcycles were listed on there. I don't ride one myself, but I thought it was a totally reasonable thing to keep in a driveway. After I finished all of this work, this woman would routinely walk through my yard without asking, but since she was taking her grandkid to play in the creek, I never said anything, even though it bothered me that she never asked. A year or so later, I wanted to sell the house and move into something bigger. I had talked to a realtor already, and I was getting things tidied up to have the house shown. As I was cleaning out a drawer, I noticed that paper the HOA lady had given me and I remembered the part about motorcycles being listed. You see, the HOA lady had started dating an older gentleman and he had moved in with her. It turns out he rode a Harley Davidson, which was always parked in her driveway. She was home, so I walked over there and politely informed her about the violation. The next day, the motorcycle was parked on her back porch, the one she bragged about to everyone who would listen, so she could tell them how much it cost. I laughed to myself, but then I remembered the part about it needing to be behind a fence. Another knock at the door, and within a few days, a fence company was building a 6-foot privacy fence, which completely hid her fancy new deck. My realtor had been on my case for at least a week about needing to put up a for sale sign, so as soon as the fence was finished, I told her it was okay. I sold the house quickly and moved out at the end of the month. Oh, and by the way, the fence was completely hideous and looked out of place because of the way her lot was shaped. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, then please don't forget to check out my endless playlist, which has thousands of videos and hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much, and I will see you again tomorrow.